comparing a standard rental, so like a long-term rental, let's call it, where you have like a 1-year lease in place versus an Airbnb. The first thing to keep into account is your management, because you're going to want to pay someone to manage your stuff so you can focus on buying more, right? For a standard rental, it's usually, just call it 10%. It's sometimes different. It depends how many units you have. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into it, but just call it like 10%. For an Airbnb, obviously you would have 20%. Another thing to keep in account when you have a standard rental, ideally, how I run all mine, I don't pay any utilities. I don't pay water, I don't pay gas, I don't pay nothing, right? That is all tenant responsibility. And this is like single family stuff, right? One house, not multiple units. For an Airbnb, you have to pay everything. And on top of that, you're paying internet, you're paying everything, right? Lawn care, snow removal, all that stuff. So that's another thing to keep into account. So next is on a standard rental, long-term rental, most of the time you don't do it furnished. Some people do have them furnished for professionals that come in and work for a year and then move out. But let's just say for your standard, everyday long-term rental, it's not furnished. For an Airbnb, it has to be fully furnished and it has to have really, really nice decor for people to actually want to stay there, right? It can't be just some shit you slapped together and called it nice and then took some crappy pictures. It actually has to look good, and the items in the home have to have some sort of decent quality to them so they last, because you don't want to put a couch in that place every year, right? Or you don't want to change chair, right? You can't just put cheap shit in the house because you'll be able to tell. The next thing is to keep into account like how your actual money in is going to come. So on a standard rental, day one, let's just say on whatever, next month, June 1st, you start your rental. June 1st, you start your Airbnb. June 1st, you got a tenant that moves in there, you're getting money in day one. On an Airbnb, yeah, you start it, you open it to the public then, but you have to get people to book it. And if you're starting new and you haven't managed any of these and you don't have a manager that is good and has a bunch of good reviews, that place pretty much starts with 0 reviews and 0 nothing. I know when I want to go somewhere, I'm looking at the place that has a lot of good reviews because it has a lot of good reviews for a reason, right? A lot of people like staying there. So just keep that in mind too. With an Airbnb, you kind of have to build it up. You have to build up your reviews, and it might take, I don't know what the actual statistic is, but let's call it 6 months to a year for you to get a pile of 5-star reviews with people saying that your place is gorgeous, it's nice to stay in, that the host is great, until you get to actually make some more income. So with all that being said, it kind of sounds like I'm biased towards long-term rentals, which I'm not, but I think a lot of people don't understand all the different things that go into an Airbnb, because how it's sold to everyone is, oh, you can turn this into an Airbnb and you make double the money. You can, that is accurate, but you have to take all this other stuff into account, right? So in the long term, apples to apples, same house, an Airbnb will probably make you way more money. But just know that you're not going to get it, furnish it, and then next thing you know, that place is going to be jumping, booked nonstop. I mean, it might. It depends on where you're located and what your competition is. But even with that, just take all that stuff into account, because that should be taken into account for to make sense if your investment makes sense, right? And always, if a $100,000 house rents for, let's say, $100,000 house rents for $1,200, and an Airbnb, let's say you're projecting out that it's going to make you $3,000 a month, don't pay more for that house. So don't pay 150 or 180 or something stupid. And you're like, oh, why would I ever do it? People do that shit all the time. Don't do that. If your $100,000 home that you're going to buy, rehab, whatever, makes sense as with $1,200 in rent, then you doing an Airbnb is, I guess, a cherry on top of the cake, right? Because you're just going to make that much more money. But again, take into account the management, how much it's going to cost you to furnish it. And it's not just the furnishing. You need cameras, you need electronic entry, you need all sorts of crazy stuff. You need all sorts of systems in place. You need cleaners. You need a lot of stuff in place. And you need to build your reviews. It's not just going to be like, day one, you're going to be raking in like $3,000, $4,000 a month because whatever, right? So take all that into account. And I can't talk anymore, so that's the end of the video.